I'll throw these two things out here because I always do this because thoughts come into my mind. I think I'm not going to remember this later, or I may not get to it. They did some research on this. You mentioned cover crops. In West Texas, they did some research on what the difference in soil temperature is with a crop with a cover on it, something growing on it, and the soil kept bare. And when they took the readings, the temperature readings, the air temperature was 105. What do you think that, some of you heard this, so don't answer if you heard it already, because it was an after the class discussion. What do you think the temperature under the cover crop, the soil temperature under the cover crop was? Air temperature was 105.
80?
Somebody said 80. Anybody else? No guesses? It was 74 degrees underneath that growing crop. Air temperature was 105. It was 74 degrees. What do you think the temperature on the bare soil was? 100? Do I get a higher bid? At 100, 110, 120? It's 150 degrees. Now, let me ask you a question. How would you feel trying to work in 150 degree temperatures? Well, that's exactly the way the microbes in the soil feel. They're in a siesta. They're not doing anything. And what else happens with that is you get moisture loss through evaporation with all of that. Because of the higher temperatures. Now, we've talked briefly about a little aspect of it, that this whole climate change thing, stuff, and people talked about the temperature increasing. Well, first of all, you know, if we were honest with the data that we have, historical data that we have and everything, there's fluctuations. What's actually happening, and I mentioned that CO2 actually follows temperature, it doesn't drive it, and it's a feedback in nature which we're about to destroy that actually will bring the temperature back into a more reasonable range. How it does that is it just increased CO2. Commercial greenhouses, we're at about 350, 400 parts per million ambient CO2 in the atmosphere. At 250, things start dying. Commercial greenhouses inject and increase the CO2 levels in the atmosphere to 1,000 to 1,200 parts per million, and they get much better growth. And so the reason the CO2 increases is because it increases vegetative growth, and vegetative growth attracts moisture. And moisture, what does water do with heat? It absorbs it, right? And then it gives it back off during cooler temperatures, so it stabilizes temperature. So it's a feedback to try to bring stability again to the temperature. But we're talking about drilling down into the earth and getting rid of it. What they're really talking about is getting rid of you and I. That's what they're really talking about. Is getting rid of us. But Satan does nothing but destroy. And
climate control is not so much about the climate as it is about control. Climate control is not so much about the climate as it is about control.
Yes.
And giving the earth a day of rest.